Here. All right, so we got Andrew Biggs, everybody. Welcome back, Andrew.
Hey,
Appreciate
good
you
to be
jumping
with
on.
you.
Yeah, right on, man. And remember, Andrew is the author of this. I think it was just put out in April, I believe, right, Andrew? The real retirement crisis. And again, as I said to him before, there's no signature in here, so that's the wrong answer. Of course, I had to pay for it. He did send me a copy to promote it, so he gets all the sweet, sweet not YouTube, but the book sale revenue.
That's right.
People relying on book sales to make an income. Woo, that's tough. But so one of the things, guys, that Andrew had emailed me, or we're emailing back and forth, was he had made me aware of Social Security projections that were somewhat ominous, and I was like, ooh, that's that could be problematic. I said I'd like to bring Andrew on to talk about it because while I'm optimistic, generally speaking. I don't think they're going to cut Social Security. I just think it'd be a doomsday scenario for the economy at large. But at the end of the day, we have some choices that has to be made. The demographics are, facts are, we're not having enough babies, and you can only import so many people who don't contribute before at some point you're running in a world of hurt. So, Andrew, welcome aboard. Just tell me, go into some of the thoughts that you had on that. I hate to say negativity, but maybe some thoughts that might not
Yeah.
be percolating out there.
Well, I mean, with Social Security, you kind of you hear these numbers. Okay, a trust fund right now, the projections will run out in 2032, and then they'll do these long terms or 75-year forecasts.
Yeah.
And the idea there is, this is a system that covers people, from the day they enter the workforce until the day they die. So they want to know things for the long term. And doing those sort of projections, when I was at Social Security, I was part of this what we call trustees working group where you're trying to, say what do we assume going forward for the economy, for demographics, for all these different factors, and you eventually come to some idea of where you want to be, and that number gets published. I mean, right now, what they say is the long-term deficit for Social Security is 3.8% of taxable payroll. What that means is if you raise the payroll tax rate today from 12.4% to 16.2%, they project that would keep the trust fund solvent for 75 years. It would sort of run out right in the 75th year.
Is that including keeping the cap in place too?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's just that, yeah, and this doesn't mean when I say that when I'm illustrating what the
Yeah.
policy means, it doesn't mean that's what the policy should be. It's
Right,
just
right,
it's an easy interpretation of it. If the deficit is 3.8% of payroll, raise the payroll tax by 3.8 percentage points, and that should do it. So that's a pretty big deal as it is. I mean, to immediately and permanently raise the payroll tax rate to 16.2%, that's pretty high.
yeah.
But it's the thing that doesn't get much discussion is that these projections are really uncertain. You're trying to say what is the economy or in the country going to look like 50 or 75 years from now, and it is very, very uncertain. What I think is important to recognize that right now most people think the uncertainty is more on the negative side, and in particular, it's the when you've got a pay-as-you-go system like Social Security, people paying in, money going right out the door, the demographics matter a ton. For
Yeah.
the way Social Security's benefit formula is set up, the economy doesn't matter that much. Because benefits are indexed to wages. So if the economy grows, wages grow, benefits grow. That's why economically, when people say, "Oh, we're going to do so and so, tax policy, we're going to
Right,
grow our way out of the Social Security problem," that
right,
can't happen.
right,
Similarly, inflation doesn't matter very much. Things like fertility and mortality, how many kids being born and how long are people living, that matters a ton.
yeah.
And the key thing is fertility. That right now, the fertility rate's about 1.6 children per woman. That's the average over people's lifetimes. So, and that's declined quite a bit. Social Security assumes that we're going to return back to 1.9 children per woman.
Ooh,
And it's one of those assumptions that, I'm not a demographer, but I know I know a lot of people who are paying a lot of attention to these things. And I don't know anybody who buys that.
yeah.
And moreover, the Congressional Budget Office, these get less publicity. They do their own projections for Social Security, They assume that fertility stays around 1.6.
Mm,
It's fertility is really hard to explain in the sense. I mean, we know how it happens, birds and
right.
bees. We don't know why it happens. And there's a recent paper trying to say, well, why has the fertility rate dropped? And they just couldn't come up with good
Yeah,
explanations for
yeah.
it. But here's the thing. If the fertility rate stays at 1.6 rather than rising to 1.9, that 3.8% of payroll deficit rises by around 20% to 4 point something.
Whoa.
And
Yeah.
so then you got to this is the point where we got real problems because Social Security isn't the only shortfall we face. We got Medicare, which is big or bigger. We've got a lot of just debt we've got to service. At some point, you got to start saying what is the government there for? What is it supposed to do? And so, there's a lot of downside risk. And when we think about how Congress, to the degree they're ever going to fix Social Security, what they tend to do is say, well, let's fix it according to these, baseline
Right.
assumptions, that assume this pretty dramatic rise in fertility. Oh, and then, whatever happens after that happens. Then one thing we learned with the politics of Social Security is it's really hard to do. So, the problem we face today is
Yeah.
almost identical to what we knew 40 years ago. Everybody knew exactly what was happening, but every year they kick the can down the road. So if you eventually fix this problem and it turns out to be bigger than you thought it was, then
Yeah.
you've got this issue again. And so I do worry we're getting to the point where you can't borrow forever. The markets are going to render some judgment. So I think the policymakers need to be more cognizant of the risks and what direction the risks go in.
So I'm clear. So right now we have fertility at 1.6. Social Security is based 3.8%. If we just raise payroll taxes by 3 point whatever it was,
Mhm.
that would solve, I get it. But
Yeah.
in actuality, that is based on not 1.6, it's based on basically an 18.7% increase in fertility over the next 75 years. And so if we don't have that 18.7% increase in fertility, then what you're saying is we're looking at like a 4.5%
Yeah.
budget deficit or deficit, which and if I'm self-employed, so I pay both sides of the equation. So basically
I
four,
think double
say
it.
again.
Yeah. So you'd be paying the whole thing.
Yeah, so that's a, what is that? A 33%
Yeah.
tax?
And for most people, the Social Security payroll tax is the biggest tax they
Yeah,
pay.
100%. Absolutely.
So it's not, this isn't nothing. And again, Social Security isn't the only thing going on in the budget. So it's, my
Right.
views on Social Security. I mean, look, you don't want to pull the rug out from under people. But, my policy view is just, the government's got to focus on things that only the government can do, or where
Right.
the government's
Yeah.
got a real advantage, and where you're filling some really important need. And, with Social Security, it's, parts of it fill a very important need, but a lot of it is just increasing payments to retirees who, as my book point out, are
Right.
the richest
Right.
retirees in the world. So,
Absolutely.
a top income couple retiring today can get close to $100,000 of Social Security benefits to keep the system solvent, or what's projected in current laws, that's going to rise. It'll go up to 120,000, eventually 150,000, in today's dollars. And so you
Yes.
you
Yeah.
do ask, okay, if you talk about Social Security in public policy circles, you hear, oh, this is a social safety net, anti-poverty
Right. Right.
program.
Right.
That part
Well,
of Social
beyond
Security.
that now, though, I mean, it's, well, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
literally well
That
beyond.
part of Social Security is cheap. It's
Right.
really not expensive to keep seniors out of poverty because there just aren't that many poor seniors, and you just need a little bit to get them up. Paying a lot of middle class people. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you're a middle income couple today,
Right.
retiring today, you'll get $58,000. That's close on three times the elderly poverty threshold before you touched a penny of your own savings. It's transmogrified into something other than a safety
Oh,
net program,
absolutely. No,
and
it's
that
well.
stuff's expensive. So we
It's
just
a
got to
default
decide whether we're
retirement
paying.
account. I mean, it's literally it's people. I mean, it's my default retirement account, and that's a fact. And the funny thing is, Andrew, is we didn't pay for it. I mean, as much as we can say, hey, we paid into it, where we did not pay we're
Yeah,
putting a whole hell of a lot less in than we're going to get out, and people are going to say, oh, it's because of growth. I get all that, but the facts are, we did not pay. the amount of money we're going to get out of it for the tax that we put in. It's just
I was just this morning looking at some Congressional Budget Office numbers where they're looking at people born in the 60s and 70s. So this is a
yeah,
group that's could be retiring kind of the 2030s when the trust
that's
fund
me. I was
runs
born in
out.
1970, right?
Okay. And among the richest fifth, the richest quintile of that group just about breaks even from Social Security, meaning they get out of it what they paid into it plus interest on their taxes.
Hmm.
So that group breaks even. Everybody else is promised more out of Social
Yes,
Security than they
that's
paid
right.
into it. So this is one of those things where it's again, I don't want to pull the rug out from under people and I don't want to throw people into poverty. But when people say you can't reduce my Social Security benefits because I paid for them, well, you didn't
Right,
fully pay for
right.
them.
No, no,
You're in the
no.
middle of the income distribution. You're probably promised 40% more in benefits than you paid in taxes and interest on the taxes. So it's, nobody's being cheated here.
No,
But politicians of both parties, whether it's Trump or Biden, will say, you earned these benefits. Well,
right.
maybe you didn't pay for them though. And that's
No,
why,
what I'm saying.
if we all pay for our benefits, the system wouldn't be running out of money.
So if fertility is that much of an issue, now you'll hear from, probably your boys over at AEI about we need more immigration and Cato and all that stuff. But immigration inherently, that I mean, because I see there'd be more bodies paying into it. But the question is that actually true? I was reading a study in UK about Somalians in England are not contributing net to they're not. They're actually a drain on
No.
the economy in England and UK. And this is not to bash Somalians. Don't take anything wrong here, but I'm just saying at the end of the day, are we actually getting enough immigration? Now, you're married to an immigrant, right? Is that you?
No.
Where's your wife from?
Oregon.
Oregon. Okay, maybe I was talking to somebody else who's married to, or I was listening to somebody else who's married to, oh, I was it Bob Murphy or something like that? Some libertarian economist I was listening to, like from Lithuania or something like that. But anyway, and so the question is, all right, so then the libertarian minded and the kind of establishment GOP say we can change that with immigration. And I'm just wondering, going back to what we're talking about before, how we've seen the modern monetary theory in place before we're talking on this live stream about, we flooded the world with dollars and we saw some inflation as a result of that. At some point, immigration isn't going to save us, right? I mean, because you can't. There's only so many productive people that can come here. What do you think about that?
If you look in the Social Security Trustees report, there's a part where they call sensitivity analysis. And
Yeah.
in the same way that you look at the sensitivity analysis on fertility, you could look at it on immigration. And they do find or their conclusion, okay, we increase immigration. It has sort of a modest positive effect on Social Security's
Yeah.
finances. Not huge.
Not enough to save it, though, it sounds like what you're kind of
No, no,
saying.
no, nothing. And I tend to think when you get into the real nitty gritty of how they're modeling stuff, I think they probably overestimated the effect of immigration. My general take on immigration is that don't your position on immigration shouldn't be decided by what immigration does to Social Security
Right.
because it's just not a major thing. It should be decided on what you think in general, and people obviously can disagree on that.
Right.
What I would say, and it's been a long time since I did any kind of modeling work on this, but if you were to shift the composition of immigrants from typically on average low skill, low education, lower paid to a much higher skilled, higher paid group, that could have a significant effect. And the reason is that in general,
Yeah.
and this is the weird stuff about how Social Security's finances work. I mean, the typical kind of median immigrant gets more out of Social Security in benefits than they paid in taxes.
Hmm.
And the reasons often they have truncated careers, they haven't paid very much in, low
Right.
wages, progressive benefit formula. Immigrants from Latin America tend to live a long time, so it's a good deal monetarily for them.
For them.
And so you
Right.
say, well, how can it then be a good deal for the system's
Right.
finances? But if you're running a pay-as-you-go system, essentially, if those immigrants come in and you get some money because they're paying taxes,
Right.
then they collect benefits. It depends how many kids they have, but also how many new immigrants are coming in after
Right.
them.
Right.
And so, immigrant fertility, regresses to the national mean very quickly. They
Yeah.
don't, they may have 4 kids in their home country. They're not going to have 4 kids here. They just kind of adjust to it. Um, if you say, okay, this pays off, and we keep bringing more immigrants, and there's a Ponzi scheme aspect to it, but it can work. The issue is all these other things. I mean, I suspect for Social Security, it's a modestly positive.
Yeah.
I think for Medicare, immigration is probably modestly negative, and the reason for that is the Medicare tax is sort of uncapped. So you really want high income people then, but also Medicare benefits are much more progressive than Social Security benefits are. So the tilt towards an
Yeah.
immigrant in terms of benefits relative to taxes is going to be heavier there. This stuff's very uncertain, but I think if you were designing immigration policy for Social Security purposes, we say, look, we want to suck in a lot of PhDs and doctors or whatever, because they're going to tend to pay a lot in and
Right.
not get as much out. So fiscally speaking, it's just that's the mix you would think you want.
So if fertility, because fertility, I mean, we just people aren't gonna have more kids, man. I mean, until it's just not gonna happen. I mean, you can see even in Muslim countries, Iran fertility rates going down, Nigeria, and it's just going down all over the world. There's no
Mhm.
other. There's just no two ways around this. So,
And if you look at the US, I mean, think of all the stuff we've seen the past 10 years of,
yeah,
kids who are going through, high school and college, the level of sort of, I don't want to say mental illness, but
absolutely.
mental health issues,
Yeah,
social media, cell
yeah.
phones, the idea, just impending doom or whatever.
Climate crisis. Don't
Yeah,
forget,
that
we're
kind
all
of
gonna
stuff.
die in a sea of
Yeah.
fire.
And so
God.
it's having kids is a sign of optimism for the
Yes,
future.
exactly.
In general, if you look at sort of the demographics of fertility, right now it's a religious versus non-religious
Absolutely. Yeah,
thing. Religious households, and it doesn't matter what religion, really,
yeah, yeah.
um, but they just tend to have much more kids than more secular non-religious households. So you got to say, what is going to turn that around?
Right?
That may recover a bit, but it's not an unreasonable starting point to say, where, if we don't know why we're at 1.6
Right.
today,
Right.
assuming we stay at 1.6 as our baseline probably isn't a crazy thing to do.
Yeah. Well,
But
especially we're going to
actually,
say on the other hand, we're going to go from 1.6 to 1.9 when there's no evidence of any fertility country going like what Hungary is trying to pay people to have babies and they're not doing it.
it's
And it's
very
like,
tough. Those
yeah,
sorts of things don't work very well.
right,
So it's like, if, maybe there's some stuff we can do on the edges. And I do think public policy being geared towards families of not just some sort of cash bonus, but
right,
things, cheaper housing, better quality schools, all those things that you think about when you're a parent, that could be helpful. But that's, it's a heavy lift,
yeah,
but at least you kind of know what you need to do. But I just think it's the Social Security projections for fertility are clearly on the high
yeah.
side compared to what other experts say. Maybe they're right, but if they're
Yeah.
not right, you get a real problem,
So if we can't increase fertility, immigrations, we'll just say it's a wash essentially.
roughly.
I mean, so we're not going to get more people paying into the Ponzi scheme, which it inherently is. I mean, I don't like Larry Kolikoff all that much because he's crazy, but he even called it a Ponzi scheme. And I don't hate the guy, I just find it a little bit over the top for me. But so we don't have enough bodies coming in. We can only raise taxes so much. Now, what you're saying is interesting is that essentially we can't grow our way. Like, remember Dick Cheney used to say we could, maybe Gingrich, we could grow our way out of the deficit and all that stuff. Social Security can't because you got a
No.
cost of living adjustment plus you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a wash there.
Social
So
Security is almost invariant to economic growth. And that's not how it always was. This was something they did back in the 70s,
interesting.
and where they indexed benefits to wage growth.
Where
And
Congress used to do it before, something like that, right, Andrew?
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. It was discretionary before. And it's with Social Security in the economy, Social Security doesn't access GDP directly, it
right.
accesses wages. So it's really the effect of higher wage growth is very, very small because it translates into higher
Yes.
benefits. So
Yes.
you got to think about other kind of stuff. But people say, okay, you can just raise tax rates or eliminate the cap or whatever. But like when I talk to my progressive friends on that, it's like if you're going to fix Social Security just on the tax side, that's the largest peacetime tax increase in history. Now, I lean to the right, so I just don't think that's a great idea. But even if you lean to the left, if I
Right.
said to, AOC or whatever,
Right.
we're going to give you the largest peacetime tax increase in history, what do you want to use it on?
Right.
Essentially what we're doing with Social Security is saying we're going to pay higher and higher benefits to richer and richer retirees who are already the richest retirees in the world. If I were her, I'd want to do Medicaid for all or Green New Deal or whatever their priorities
Right.
are.
Understood. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a left-right thing. It's just understanding that if you raise taxes to fill the Social Security gap, you can't do it again,
Right.
especially if you're lifting the cap. At that point, high earners are tapped out. You're not getting anything else from them. So then you guys say, oh, do we want middle class tax increases? It's you just got to be realistic about what is really necessary spending versus what's not necessary. Hundred
Have you
thousand a year to a high income couple, not necessary in my book.
you
And
done
I'm not
any?
saying cheat people out of it, pull the rug
No,
out,
right. Understood.
but you
Yeah.
wouldn't design this that way. So you want to go to something that is, there's no other country that pays Social Security benefits as high as ours. Um,
What's our tax rate compared to other countries off top? And you might not know off the top of your head. I'm
It's
sure.
it's it's lower than say the typical OECD country because you
Oh.
got your France and your Belgium or whatever.
And
But
we
compared
pay
to us,
higher benefits but lower taxes for Social
no,
Security.
we pay lower taxes and get lower average benefits.
Oh, okay.
Um, but compared to, say, Canada, their
Right.
tax rate is about 10.5%, ours 12.5%, and their cap is much lower.
Right. Right.
We pay taxes up to 175, 180. They're paying taxes up to 75.
Yeah. Right.
Same as in the UK. I mean, they have a little surtax in the top, but generally their main tax stops at around 75,000. So they're much more targeted systems, and they're,
Yes.
they're like, look, the government's job, look, if you think of this as a sort of fiscal conservative, so look, the government's got certain things it
Right.
can do, like alleviating poverty, that private charities or whatever are not great at doing. But if you look around the world, running a pension system for everybody else through the government is usually a terrible idea because governments are terrible at saving money for the future. They're great at promising benefits, but literally, if you look around, and I talk about this in a whole chapter in the book, looking at retirement savings around the world, but these retirement savings gaps, as they call them, in nearly every country are a government problem. They're not that households or individuals aren't saving enough. It's a government's have promised you this much, but only
Right.
saved this much. It's true with Social Security, true everywhere. So I'm just not sure you want to put too much trust in that.
How much have you ever done any research on if they did cut back Social Security? We'll just use 20%. What would that affect the capital markets? Any have you, that seems to be I've seen, from a 30,000 viewpoint, that would be a huge hit to equity markets. What do you think?
Okay, let's say if you just do it overnight,
Right.
then you probably pushes into recession or whatever. Because it's just this sudden change. It's the suddenness of it
Right.
that is the problem. But if you just said, okay, over time, we're
Right.
going to scale down, so it'll be 20% lower, which is a
Right.
more realistic policy. The response you're going to get from people is low income people don't really respond to that stuff very much.
Right.
Middle and high income people, the response is they're going to work more,
Yeah.
extend retirement, and all that, and they're going to save more. So if they do that in roughly equal proportions, then the effect on things like interest rates or capital markets shouldn't be enormous because you're increasing both labor and capital
Yeah.
supply. This is a very textbook sort of econ model. But I don't think it would be, in general, it'd be good for the economy because,
Well, you
here's,
couldn't do that to current recipients, though. That would, you know what I'm saying? Or you
well,
could, yeah, go ahead.
no, you could, well, not very much, but let me give you an
Right.
example
Yeah.
of it. Back in the 1970s, you had something called the Social Security notch. And the notch was in the beginning of the 70s, Congress changed the Social Security benefit formula to account for inflation, but
Right.
they screwed it up so that benefits were sort of double indexed for inflation. So benefits for new retirees were rising really, really fast.
Hmm.
And they looked at this, and the systems could be bankrupt almost overnight. So the 1977 reforms kind of fixed that, and they dialed back benefits to a somewhat more realistic level, but they left in place the high benefits, the people who'd taken advantage of this sort of error. So you have
Hmm.
what they call the notch was
Yeah.
this rapid reduction in
Right.
benefits for new retirees over the course of just a few years. This is a great natural experiment of what happens. How do people react to it? And there's a guy who I used to work with at Social Security. His name is Jay Song. And he's very good at all this data.
Yeah.
And he did a paper with some outside economists and said, well, okay, how did these people react to having their benefits cut so much?
Yeah.
And what he found was they can look at people's earnings records and they know when you're born, they know what your benefits are going to be. What they found, and these are people right, they're in their mid to late 50s when this happened. For each dollar of lost benefits, these people's lifetime earnings increased by around 61 cents. So what you're saying is even in a short period of time, people really reacted and they worked more to make
I
up.
say they work more. Okay,
They
gotcha. Yeah.
and one of their points was this doesn't just mean that they're earning back a lot of the benefits. It's also good for Social Security because that extra 61 cents of earnings generates payroll taxes.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
there is a broad thing that it is cheaper to fix. Let's say Social Security's long-term deficit's 25 trillion or whatever it is. It's cheaper to fix that through benefit cuts than through tax increases because with benefit cuts, people are in fact going to
Yeah.
work more and that throws off more payroll tax revenue. With tax increases, people are going to work less, which
Yeah.
means essentially you're going to collect less than you
Yeah.
thought you would.
Absolutely.
So you want to do stuff that's kind of good for the economy. But this plays into social policy. Poor people, they're not saving in the way they're not going to
Right.
financial planners. They're not, in technical terms, life cycle model. They're
Right.
not doing that.
Right.
But once you go to middle and upper income people,
Yeah.
they clearly are. And so then we can say, what kind of changes can we
Yeah.
make that they will react to in a positive way so that we can cut a dollar of Social Security benefits while reducing their retirement incomes by much less than a dollar because they're going to work more and save more. And that's what
I
you
would think
need. You want the economy to be strong, and work and savings are kind of key to that.
I would think that would actually increase the equity markets too. If people are saying, "Hey, I got to," I mean, literally, if you're going to say, "I'm getting a dollar less in Social Security, I got to make that up someplace," I'll
Mhm.
better save, which I'll put into my retirement account, which goes to my, the total stock index fund, or even, and I would think it might even reduce interest rates if there's more
Yeah.
demand for
Well,
government
there's more
bonds.
capital available.
Yeah, exactly.
And there really is a lot of research on this of how does Social Security and government pensions in general, how do they displace private savings?
Yep.
And so you have some stuff from the US, but there's a lot of stuff from other countries because if they do a pension reform in some country, they see how people react to it. And it's not dollar for dollar, but among upper income people, 75 cents in the dollar is not unreasonable, meaning for every dollar you lose in government benefits,
Yeah.
you're going to make up 75 cents by working longer, saving more, and so forth.
Yeah, that's
So it's
pretty
just
interesting.
and with something like Medicare, that's a little tougher to do
Yeah.
in the sense that it's this insurance program, it's
Right.
all integrated with stuff. You don't know what your costs are going to be.
Ah, that's right,
Social
right.
Security is a clean thing. Cut my
Right.
benefits by a dollar, I'll save more. It's really easy to fix it
Right.
on your own. Medicare isn't. So I tend to think if you're just thinking public policy, do Social Security disproportionately on the benefit cut side
Yeah.
because you want to free up some money for Medicare where it really is harder to do that.
Well, the Medicare is easy fix. Just give everybody a voucher and say buy your own damn health insurance. No, I'm saying my dad was very active in the health savings account before that, the art medical savings accounts and whatnot. And there's always a patient power for Medicare. They used to have NCPA, National Center for
Yeah,
Policy
yeah, yeah, yeah.
out of Dallas. My dad was part of that, and the whole thing was just give everybody a voucher, let them do it themselves. Of course, all the big government type says, but they'll screw it up. And you're like,
Yes.
really? The people screw up on their auto insurance? Probably not. Yeah, the whole thing is crazy,
Yeah.
but.
Well, I mean, healthcare is complicated and
Oh, it's because there's no price mechanism, Andrew. You know
Yeah,
that.
well, it's because people think we've got a free market healthcare system. I mean, look, to a certain degree we do, but we also have a lot of like local monopolies in the sense of, for most people, there's only one hospital system they're
Exactly.
going to go to. If you want a certain drug, there's only one pharmaceutical company you're going to go to, and they kind of rig it to keep their patents in place, that sort of stuff. So it's not a market in the way that cell phones or something are a market where, you're checking on Amazon for what's got the
Right.
best features. It's more akin to getting your car fixed, where it's like something happens, you're like, I gotta get this thing fixed. You don't
Right.
know what the hell is going
Uh,
on.
Take it to the first guy.
And
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so it is, yeah, I think you need market elements, but I honestly do think more regulation in the sense of to get competitiveness there. Because in a lot of places where you
Absolutely.
think you've got a competitive market, really you don't. And so that kind of stuff is really helpful.
Well, my
Uh,
dad would argue about the GI Bill. So the GI Bill is a government entity, designed to get people to go to college. And when I got out of the Army, they said, "Here's a bunch of money. You can choose wherever the hell you want to go. It's got to meet these parameters.
yeah.
You can't just go to Trump University and sell steaks. But if you,
Hey, hey.
if you meet these parameters, we're just going to give you the money, and there's a voucher."
Yeah.
And that's what the argument would be with health insurance, is that we have no clue what we're paying for. I don't
And
want
there
to get
is
down
an
this.
argument. I mean, I was in the Bush administration on the Social Security side when the
Yeah,
Medicare Part D drug
yeah,
benefit came in. And I
yeah.
think, that's been a fairly successful
It
kind
has
of
been.
market
Absolutely.
mechanism
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
there's a million providers you can choose
Yeah.
from and you could switch around.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's got that element that you want to try to keep costs down.
And Medicare Advantage. That's Part B, a Part D on Medicare, same kind of thing. It's a voucher program essentially. It's very complex. It doesn't have to
Yeah,
be,
yeah, yeah.
but still, it's better than just an entity top-down government. All right, so I know I want to get you out of here, but so basically, that's interesting. You said the tax increases would be more detrimental than benefit cuts. That's pretty interesting. I hadn't thought
Yeah.
about it like that. I think that's 100% right, and again, Social Security, if it's there to keep people out of poverty, a la FDR, which was the basis of Social
Mhm.
Security, then we really need to revisit, in terms of me, I mean, we're gonna have a sizable Social Security between my wife and I. Now I'll get $4,000 a month at my full retirement age. That's in 12 years, and but she'll get half of that essentially. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That's $72,000 a year, and if that's all our income, it's all tax free, by the way. That's not
Well,
living.
it's one reason I think why, I mean, going to the bigger picture, why we don't have a retirement crisis is that a lot of times people are surprised by how high their Social Security benefits are going to
Exactly.
be. I wrote a
100%.
piece in the Wall Street Journal, I don't know, probably 2 years ago, and it just threw out the idea of capping the maximum benefit and
Yeah.
just saying, look, okay, we're paying 96,000 a year for a couple, just don't pay more than that.
Yeah.
And that's not going to fix much of the problem, but at least sends the idea that at a certain point enough is enough.
Yeah.
But the inspiration for that came, I was just doing my own retirement plan. I was trying to calculate how much my wife and I are going to get. I'm like, holy, well, that's a lot of money. And
If you
so,
wait
but
till you're
it's
70, you're like, what the hell, man? I mean, I'm gonna get 5,000 a year a month if I wait till I'm 70. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? It's like
And
crazy,
there's look, if you've paid off your house,
right?
and I was talking to
Which the vast majority of retarees have houses that are paid and paid
yeah,
off. Anyway, keep going,
I
Andrew.
was in I was at Stanford a week or two ago for a conference. I was talking to, oh, there's Paco,
Yeah.
two economists from Rand, Mike Hurd and Suzanne Rowetter, who
Yeah. Oh,
do really
man.
good work. And the way Mike put it, and they have much more, their picture of Social Security or of retirement security is much more positive than what you
Right.
read in the press.
I just reading
But
that one of their articles just before we jumped on, as a matter of fact. So
But
it's
the
interesting.
way Mike put it was, he said, if you're married and you have Social Security and your house is paid off, very, very likely you're going to be fine in Social
100%.
Security.
Unequivocally.
And what they tend to find is people who are not doing well in retirement, and they found like disproportionately, it's like single, less educated women
Women. Yeah.
what they speculated at least. I don't think they got, I don't want to go too far saying what
Right.
where their data show is often it's sort of late in life negative shocks, like getting divorced right before you retire.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
something that can because you lose those economies of scale in living costs, but it's a tough thing to sort of insure against.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no insurance for getting divorced. And the only alternative is save a ton more, which is again can be wasteful. So a lot of we do have people who are falling short in retirement, but I think some of it is just tough to fix
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
sense that it's like healthcare shocks we can insure against, using private or government insurance, whatever. But some of these things, like a late in life divorce, are really tough. But if you don't have one of those things, as you said, if you're married, paid off house, and you got Social Security, probably you're going to be in pretty good shape.
What's I think I might have asked you this before. What Chauvin think about the whole over at Stanford? What's his take on all this? Is he John Chauvin? Isn't that his name Chauvin?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Chauvin. Yeah,
yeah.
he's a longtime econ professor at Stanford. And I actually just wrote a piece with him recently about sort of raising the Social Security retirement age in a way that sort of protects lower income people who are not going to live as long.
I
Um,
think I read that as a matter of fact. Yeah,
there you go.
that's what brought
But
me to
it's
think about
I don't know exactly where he is in sort of the kind of retirement crisis stuff. I
it.
tend to think he's certainly not among the people who is like, well, this is a, awful kind of
Yeah.
thing. But I've not heard him. I mean, he knows my views well enough, that's for sure. I've certainly not heard him weigh in and say things are terrible.
Yeah.
So, and it interestingly, if you, I mean, I mix between these sort of public policy circles which kind of gets into what you read in the newspaper, but
Right.
also academics. And the academic work in retirement is much, much more rigorous, but it also tends to reach conclusions that are much, much more positive.
Yeah.
In the sense of, the more rigorous the work, the less likely it is to have some sort of panic-inducing conclusion to it. It's always the pop lightweight stuff, which is really scary. But as I said in the book, you just pull on a string and you see it falls apart. And I can go on and on with that kind
The
of
Susie
stuff.
Ormans of the world, and I'm not bashing Susie. I am bashing Susie when she said you get 10 million bucks. I was like, God Almighty, Susie Orman, give me a break. It's
Yeah,
so
it's
insane.
stuff like that is just it's
I'm
not
not saying
helpful.
Andrew saying anything negative on Susie Orman. That's me, not Andrew, as
I
they
don't
say.
pay any attention to Susie Harmon.
I don't either. I
But
just
it's
I
just not, it's this sort of one size fits all thing. When people say, "Well, what's your magic number?" Well, what if you tell me your pre-retirement income, I can give you some idea of what your post-retirement income should be. But since Social Security is progressive, it's impossible to put any number on it. And in what I say with all these guys who are saying, you need $10 million or whatever, if people needed that much money to retire, how
Right.
come we don't have seniors living the streets
I
today?
love
Seniors are overwhelmingly, they've got lower poverty than younger Americans, but they're overwhelmingly satisfied with their finances. So how is it they're doing so well when everybody says they don't have enough? That's the puzzle they have to solve. If you know the research well, you can explain it.
right. Easily.
Um,
Right.
Social Security benefits are higher than people think. Retirement spending tends to decline
The
significantly.
houses are
That
paid
can
off.
explain it.
Yeah, exactly.
But for these other guys, they can't answer the question of why do we not have a retirement crisis already? Because it's not like retirement savings have gone down, they've gone up. So
Yes.
tomorrow's retirees are going to have more than today's retirees did. They just have a very tough time answering those questions.
Yeah, because there's no answer. That's funny. I sent you
Oh,
the
yeah.
this book I'm reading on this mill that went out of business in New Hampshire, a paper mill, and I sent it to you about the guy. He was working until he's 91, not only because there was a labor shortage during World War II, because he worked for 25 years, but there is no pension. There's
Yeah.
no pension to give him a retirement, so he had to keep working basically until they wheeled him out of there. And that's not atypical. That's very typical about those people back then. There just
Mhm.
wasn't the pensions that people have. That
No,
was
no. I mean,
unbelievable.
pensions, private sector defined benefit pension coverage, and coverage is the key word, peaked in like
Right,
1975, like less than 40% of the labor force, of the private sector workforce. But even at that point,
right.
something like 9 in 10 covered people never got a benefit because of the
Yep.
vesting rules. So, if you've got a system where most people aren't covered and most people are covered don't get benefits, well, I guess you can say we had a DB pension system, but most people weren't really getting very much out of it. I,
Absolutely.
I really do think we are simply better off today with 401ks than we were
Ah,
with
absolutely.
traditional pensions.
All right, Andrew. Well, one more sales pitch for your book. Get
Please buy.
book. I'll put a link in the show notes. If you buy
That's if you don't buy that, I will have a retirement crisis.
Hey, hang tight for just a second. I'll put it, and by the way, don't, I'm going to stop recording here and then I'll say bye to you. Real quick, Andrew can be found on American Enterprise Institute, aei.org. Just type in Biggs. He's on Twitter, and I'll put all the links and Andrew's stuff on the show. And he's got a Substack.
He
He writes
does.
about what? About once a week or so, it looks like,
Yeah,
right?
I write quite a bit actually.
Yeah, right on. And so,
It's free. I'm not going to hit you up for $5 a month.
well, you should, but
Yeah.
I'll put links in the show notes. So, all right, thanks, Andrew. Hang tight for just a second. We're going to stop recording.